In the heart of a magical bamboo forest, where the leaves whispered gentle lullabies and the moonlight danced through the branches, lived a very special baby panda named Paul. Paul was the fluffiest, most adorable little panda you could ever imagine, with round black ears and the softest white fur that felt like the most delicate silk. He lived in a cozy den, tucked beneath the roots of the largest bamboo tree in the entire forest, where everything was peaceful and warm. Paul had everything a baby panda could want. He had the sweetest bamboo shoots to nibble on, crystal clear stream water to drink, and the most comfortable bed made of dried leaves and moss. But there was one thing that Paul had been dreaming about for weeks and weeks. Every night, as he curled up in his leafy bed, Paul would think about having the most perfect pair of pajamas in the whole wide world. You see, Paul had noticed that all the other forest animals had special nighttime clothes. The rabbits wore tiny cotton nightgowns with little flower patterns. The squirrels had acorn-shaped pajama tops with matching bottoms. Even the wise old owl had a magnificent sleeping robe decorated with stars and moons. But poor little Paul had nothing special to wear when it was time for bed. And this made him feel quite sad indeed. One particularly quiet evening, when the forest was settling into its nightly slumber, Paul made a very important decision. He sat up in his bed, rubbed his sleepy eyes with his tiny paws, and declared to himself that tomorrow would be the day he would search for the most wonderful pajamas ever made. He wanted pajamas that would make him feel cozy and warm, pajamas that would help him have the sweetest dreams, and most importantly, pajamas that would be perfect just for him. As Paul drifted off to sleep that night, he dreamed of all the different kinds of pajamas he might find. He dreamed of pajamas covered in bamboo patterns, pajamas with little panda prints, pajamas that were soft as clouds, and pajamas that sparkled like the stars above the forest canopy. When morning came, Paul woke up feeling more excited than he had ever felt before. After eating a breakfast of tender bamboo shoots and drinking cool water from the stream, Paul began his great adventure. He waddled out of his cozy den and looked around the forest with wonder and determination. The morning sun was filtering through the bamboo leaves, creating beautiful patterns of light and shadow on the forest floor. Paul took a deep breath and started walking down the winding forest path. The first place Paul decided to visit was the meadow where Mrs. Rabbit lived with her family. Mrs. Rabbit was famous throughout the forest for her excellent sewing skills and her collection of beautiful fabrics. Paul had heard from the chattering squirrels that Mrs. Rabbit made the most comfortable nightwear for all the woodland creatures. When Paul arrived at the sunny meadow, he found Mrs. Rabbit hanging tiny pajamas on a clothesline that stretched between two apple trees. The pajamas fluttered gently in the morning breeze like colorful butterflies. There were pajamas in every color imaginable. Soft pink ones with tiny roses, bright blue ones with fluffy clouds, green ones with dancing leaves, and yellow ones with smiling suns. Mrs. Rabbit noticed Paul approaching and hopped over to greet him with a warm smile. She was wearing a lovely apron covered in carrot patterns and had a measuring tape draped around her neck. Her kind eyes twinkled as she looked down at the little panda, who suddenly felt quite shy about asking for help. Paul explained his wish to Mrs. Rabbit, telling her all about his dream of finding perfect pajamas. Mrs. Rabbit listened carefully, nodding her head and making thoughtful humming sounds. When Paul finished his story, Mrs. Rabbit clapped her paws together with delight and immediately began showing him different fabric samples. She showed Paul silk fabrics that felt smooth and cool, cotton fabrics that were soft and breathable, and flannel fabrics that were warm and cozy. There were fabrics with polka dots, stripes, flowers, and even some with tiny panda faces printed on them. But somehow, none of them felt quite right to Paul. They were all beautiful, but something was missing. Mrs. Rabbit suggested that Paul might want pajamas with pockets for storing bedtime snacks, or perhaps pajamas with a hood to keep his ears warm during chilly nights. She even offered to make him pajamas with special buttons that looked like bamboo shoots. Paul appreciated all of her wonderful ideas, but he still felt like he had not found exactly what he was looking for. Thanking Mrs. Rabbit for her kindness and promising to return if he changed his mind, Paul continued on his journey through the forest. His next stop was the old oak tree, where Oliver the owl lived in a hollowed-out trunk high above the ground. Oliver was known for his wisdom and his extensive knowledge of all things in the forest. Paul had to call up to Oliver quite loudly because owls sleep during the day, and Oliver was taking his morning nap. When Oliver finally poked his feathered head out of his tree hollow, his big round eyes blinked sleepily at the little panda below. Paul shared his pajama quest with Oliver, who listened with great interest while occasionally hooting thoughtfully. Oliver suggested that Paul might find what he was looking for at the forest marketplace, where traveling merchants sometimes brought special items from faraway places. The forest marketplace was located in a clearing where several forest paths met, and it was bustling with activity even in the early afternoon. There were stalls selling all sorts of wonderful things: honey from the busy bees, nuts from the industrious squirrels, berries from the helpful bears, and beautiful flowers from the garden mice. Paul wandered from stall to stall, his eyes wide with amazement at all the different items for sale. He found a stall run by a family of raccoons who specialized in nighttime accessories. They had sleeping masks decorated with moon and star patterns, fluffy slippers in every size, and even nightlights made from captured fireflies in tiny glass jars. At another stall, run by a cheerful family of hedgehogs, Paul discovered the most incredible collection of blankets and quilts. There were blankets made from dandelion fluff, quilts stitched with intricate patterns of forest scenes, and even magical blankets that supposedly helped you dream of your favorite things. But still, Paul had not found any pajamas that felt perfect for him. He was beginning to feel a little discouraged when he noticed a small, quiet stall tucked away in the corner of the marketplace. The stall was run by an elderly badger who had kind, twinkling eyes and wore spectacles perched on the end of his nose. The badger's stall was different from all the others. Instead of being filled with lots of items, it had just a few very special things displayed carefully on wooden shelves. There were hand-knitted scarves that seemed to glow with warmth, mittens that looked like they could keep your paws cozy, even in the coldest winter. And in the very center of the display, Paul spotted something that made his heart skip with excitement. There, hanging on a tiny wooden hanger, was the most beautiful pair of pajamas Paul had ever seen. They were made from the softest bamboo fiber, dyed in the gentlest shade of cream, with delicate green bamboo leaf patterns embroidered all around the edges. The pajama top had little wooden buttons carved to look like tiny bamboo segments, and the pants had a drawstring waist made from silky bamboo thread. The elderly badger noticed Paul staring at the pajamas with wonder and shuffled over with a gentle smile. His voice was warm and scratchy, like autumn leaves rustling in the wind. He explained that these were very special pajamas indeed, crafted by the mountain pandas who lived high up in the misty peaks where the bamboo grew tallest and strongest. Paul reached out with one tiny paw to touch the fabric, and it felt like touching a cloud. The material was incredibly soft, yet it looked sturdy enough to last through many cozy nights of sleep. The badger told Paul that bamboo fiber was naturally temperature regulating, which meant the pajamas would keep him perfectly comfortable, whether the night was warm or cool. But when Paul asked about the price, his little heart sank. The pajamas cost more bamboo shoots than Paul had ever seen in his entire life. The badger saw Paul's disappointed expression and patted him gently on the head with a weathered paw. He suggested that Paul might be able to work for the pajamas by helping around the forest marketplace for a few days. Paul's eyes lit up with hope and determination. He eagerly agreed to work, even though he had never had a job before. The badger explained that Paul could help by carrying items for customers, organizing displays at different stalls, and keeping the marketplace clean and tidy. The next morning, Paul arrived at the marketplace bright and early, ready to begin his very first job. The badger introduced him to all the other merchants, who welcomed the little panda with warm smiles and encouraging words. Paul felt proud to be part of the marketplace community, even if it was just temporary. His first task was to help Mrs. Squirrel arrange her nut display. Paul carefully sorted acorns by size, arranged walnuts in neat rows, and made sure all the hazelnuts were polished until they gleamed. Mrs. Squirrel was so pleased with Paul's careful work that she gave him a small bag of honey-roasted chestnuts as a thank you gift. Next, Paul helped the rabbit family organize their fabric stall. He learned to fold different types of cloth properly, discovered how to arrange colors so they looked most appealing to customers, and even learned to measure fabric using a special wooden ruler. The work was tiring, but Paul felt happy knowing that each task brought him closer to his dream pajamas. During his lunch break, Paul sat under a shady tree and nibbled on bamboo shoots while watching all the forest creatures go about their daily activities. He noticed how everyone seemed to have their own special purpose and place in the forest community. The bees collected nectar to make honey. The squirrels gathered nuts for winter, and the birds sang beautiful songs that made everyone feel cheerful. In the afternoon, Paul was assigned to help the hedgehog family with their blanket and quilt stall. This was his favorite job so far because he got to feel all the different textures and learn about how each blanket was made. The hedgehogs taught him about different stitching patterns, showed him how to test fabric softness, and explained why some materials were better for summer, while others were perfect for winter. Paul worked so diligently that several customers complimented the hedgehog family on their helpful young assistant. One elderly turtle was so impressed with Paul's politeness and helpfulness that she bought an extra quilt just because Paul had taken such good care of her while she was shopping. As the day came to an end, Paul felt tired but satisfied. His paws were a little sore from all the work, and he had small bits of fabric fluff stuck in his fur, but he felt proud of what he had accomplished. The badger praised Paul for his hard work and told him that if he continued working like this, he would have earned his pajamas in just 2 more days. That evening, Paul walked home through the forest, feeling different than he had ever felt before. He was tired, but it was a good kind of tired, the kind that comes from working hard towards something important. As he curled up in his leafy bed, Paul looked up at the stars twinkling through the bamboo canopy and felt grateful for all the kind forest creatures who had helped him during his first day of work. The second day brought new challenges and adventures. Paul was assigned to help with deliveries around the forest, which meant he got to visit parts of the woodland he had never seen before. He carried packages to families living in distant tree hollows, delivered fresh flowers to elderly animals who could not travel to the marketplace, and even helped transport a heavy rocking chair to a family of possums who lived near the forest pond. During these deliveries, Paul met so many different forest creatures and learned about their unique ways of life. He visited a family of otters who lived in a cozy burrow by the stream, met a wise old turtle who collected interesting stones, and even had tea with a family of mice who lived in an elaborate network of tunnels beneath a fallen log. Each family Paul visited was impressed by his politeness and helpfulness. Many of them had never met such a courteous young panda, and they showered him with compliments and small gifts. By the end of the second day, Paul had collected quite a collection of little treasures: smooth pebbles from the otters, pressed flowers from the mice family, and even a tiny wooden flute carved by the possums. The badger was delighted with Paul's excellent work and told him that he had earned not only the pajamas, but also the respect and friendship of many forest creatures. Paul felt his heart swell with pride and happiness as he realized that his quest for pajamas had led him to something even more valuable: a sense of belonging and purpose in his forest community. On the third and final day of work, Paul was given the special honor of helping the badger himself organize his stall and assist customers who were interested in the most precious items. Paul learned about the craftsmanship that went into each handmade piece, discovered the stories behind various treasures, and gained a deep appreciation for the skill and care that artisans put into their work. When the sun began to set on his final day of work, the elderly badger called Paul over to his stall with a warm smile. He carefully lifted the beautiful bamboo fiber pajamas from their special hanger and presented them to the little panda. Paul's eyes filled with happy tears as he held the softest, most perfect pajamas he had ever imagined. The badger helped him try them on right there in the marketplace, and they fit as if they had been made just for him. That night, Paul returned to his cozy den wearing his new pajamas, feeling more content than he had ever felt before. As he settled into his leafy bed, the bamboo fiber kept him perfectly comfortable, just as the badger had promised. But Paul realized something wonderful. The pajamas were even more special because of the journey he had taken to earn them. He had discovered the joy of hard work, made new friends throughout the forest, and learned that the most precious things in life are often those we work hardest to achieve. As Paul drifted off to sleep in his perfect pajamas, he dreamed of bamboo forests and kind forest friends, sleeping peacefully until morning came.